in February, but that hating isn't necessary. You being petty cause you see me rising, becoming legendary, and you talking down like you very scary. Come on, dude.
Well, the dirt sheets were wrong again. They told me, I was told by the internet.com that WWE was going to make NXT 2.0 edgier, that it was going to be an edgier product, and that the proof of this was going to be like Mandy Rose and black leather, and oh my goodness, look how hot she is. And then at the first slight hint of controversy, WWE overhauls an entire character. So what took place? I'm not going to read any articles because I have other things to do. But Joe Gacy, who was playing in SJW on NXT, he did one promo where he talked about his safe space and not wanting to utilize his male privilege and being a conflict resolution kind of guy. He cut one promo. It didn't get over because people were very, very, very uncomfortable, which is good because you want people to feel something. And when it comes to these characters, too many of these characters are bubbly and they're happy and all this kind of stuff, or they're mean face mugging. They didn't know how to take Gacy, because he's saying things that they probably believe, but he's a heel and he's crazy. And you can look at his face and you can tell he was crazy. And I was talking about this in my review of NXT 2.0. I thought he was going to get a chance to develop that character and show that the character is really nuts. That's what I thought they were going to do. But no, we didn't even get a week because the New York Post, Fox News, everybody picked it up that they were doing a rip on the woke left. And just like with Jack Swagger, they started taking it down. The new character hasn't even done anything yet. All Joe Gacy has done is one promo. And I saw a lot of people are like, good, that's great. They listen to the fans. I'm like, no, they listen to the complainers. They listen to the whiners because they know NXT is not only because USA Network and WWE, these are publicly traded companies, and you can't go out there and be as offensive as you can years ago. But ultimately, that the concept of the edgy product, you can forget it. You can forget it. People complain about everything. Joe Gacy was not gay. He didn't say anything about being gay. He wasn't like a trans person. He wasn't like a racist or crazy white supremacist. He made fun of limp-wristed weirdos online. That's all he did, was use things like safe space and male privilege and a heel capacity. All of a sudden, his character has to go away. That is very bizarre. Look, I get that WWE does not want to be political. And maybe that's the reason why they started to do this thing. Is they don't like when Fox News complained about Jack Swagger. They took Jack Swagger, they diluted Jack Swagger rather. That's when they added Cesaro to the mix. You probably don't remember that. But when Dutch Mantel was talking about immigrants sneaking across the border, and they was like, who's an immigrant on this roster? Can't put a Mexican on the team. So what you do is you take Cesaro, who is Swiss, white man, you threw him on the team. And now it's, we the people, Americans are, it go from almost racial to sort of the values of the United States. And it was because Fox News complained. I remember it clear as day. I think it was Bill O'Reilly. Or was it Sean Hannity? Someone was like, we get it, McMahons. You didn't get the Republican nomination. So now you want to make fun of us on your wrestling show? 2 or 3 weeks later, Jack Swagger was changed completely. And now we see that they react even faster to people complaining about Joe Gacy. And the lovely thing about this is how many people think this is a good thing. It's not. People complain that WWE is sterile, that they don't take any chances, they don't push any envelopes. And then the moment they try to, in any way, people complain. I remember a couple of years ago, there was people who were saying WWE needs to be more edgy. They need to take more risks. And I remember a segment where I forget who it was. Was it Jonathan Coachman? Was it some male microphone holder. He knocked on the women's locker room door. Nobody answered. So he opened the door and he goes in. And he sees Alexa Bliss in like the mirror. And you can see like her shoulders, her bare shoulders. And I remember online, people just absolutely exploded. How dare he go into the women's locker room without asking? The cameras are peeking in on Alexa Bliss. This is voyeurism. It's horrible. Why would you show this to children? I'm like, it's Alexa Bliss's shoulders. It's her bare shoulders. I've never even, I've heard of foot fetishes. I've never heard of shoulder fetishes. What is going on with these people? They don't understand. They create their own realities. WWE would push the buttons even more if people were not so sensitive. But they are. They're awful. Mainstream media, that's the last thing they really want, is the mainstream media making a big deal out of a wrestling character. Now, 20 years ago, it would have been great that Joe Gacy got into the mainstream media. It would have been awesome. Because that means people would have wanted to know what was so offensive. What did he do that was so upsetting? And then the next week, he probably would have done something that was slightly less offensive, but still offensive. So this was, look, my only guess, if I had to guess, is that, well, matter of fact, before I get to my guess, let's say this. This tells me that, one, Vince McMahon is probably not overseeing NXT, which is what we keep being told is happening. Oh, Vince is overseeing NXT. I don't believe it. Because, two, I believe this was probably a USA Network call. If I had to guess, I would say USA Network probably told him to change that character. That's why they did it so fast. If it was just fan reaction, they probably would have given it some time first, and then they would have let the fan reaction build. But if it was like, for them to change it so quickly, it was probably USA Network, which means probably people complained to USA. And it is what it is. We cannot have nice things because WWE's audience is so sensitive that if they make fun of anybody, remember on Monday, they did a very thin fat joke between Doudrop and Eva Marie, right? There was a very, very thinly veiled fat joke, and people were ready to jump out the window. All Eva Marie said is, people like you can't look like people like me. And people were like, what, is she fat shaming? Is she fat shaming Doudrop? And it was like, man, here we go. here we go. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't get anything done. It's one thing if it's Muhammad Hassan, right? Muhammad Hassan, was the Arab sort of terrorist kind of character, even though I don't think he meant to be. What I think happened is the fans turned on him and they just went with it. But the character, if you look at how the character was portrayed, he was portrayed as, a guy who was being mistreated by, the United States after 9/11. They were saying, we're just good people, just like you. And then people were just kind of like, boo, we don't care about these Muslims, get out of here. And they just decided to go with it. And then he went full Saudi Prince on the WWE roster, and not USA, but UPN was like, no mas, get rid of that guy. And that's why they had to kill him off. And that's why, because they did it so fast, I think that's why they pulled Joe Gacy. Then they operate a little bit faster when you complain to the networks. And if you have a good point. But the political stuff, they kind of want to stay away from it, which is why, so many characters are so similar, and it's a problem. But it's the wrestling fans causing the problem for themselves. They get super offended by little things, and then they force promoters to respond. Now we're seeing that Tony Khan is like, well, Max Caster was never suspended. He was never suspended. We just took him off TV for 2 months. Huh, yeah. Sure. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But in any event, Joe Gacy had something going for him, and he was actually gaining interest. People probably would have tuned in to NXT to see what he was doing. That upset people so much that, the mainstream media picked up on it. So this tells you that WWE, they want to protect their sponsorships, their relationships with networks, not just cause rife with the fans, because there's always going to be those people who are problematic in the fandom. For instance, why does Apollo Crews get to be a Nigerian and he has to be a heel? You're going to have those people. But when in situations like this, you understand that this is a publicly traded company. They don't want to deal in this kind of schmuck, the controversial stuff they would have wanted to participate in 20 years ago, which would have been like, oh, he made the news, good. This means he's a star. Put him out there again. Put him in longer segments. Have him say even more crazy things. He would be a pleb filter. He would filter out all the people who aren't really wrestling fans or who aren't really interested in the art form, and would have made it more palatable to the fans. Over time, it would have been, a little bit different for the fans. But ultimately, they can't do that anymore. And they didn't do it much back then, too. As much as we try to say, like, the Attitude Era was really raunchy. A lot of the stuff, like when they nixed Goldust, there were certain things about Goldust that they changed completely over the years due to outside pressure. It just took a little bit longer because it was a private company and they saw Goldust was working. But in these days, it's happening faster and faster and faster, that when something problematic happens, you've got people backing up off of it, and it's unfortunate, man, but that's why we can't have an edgier NXT. So all these people who were tweeting about how they want an edgy NXT, no, they don't. No, they don't. WWE is going to make the NXT edgier. How so? By making women look sexy? That's that's not edgy. Blood is edgy. Cursing is edgy. Excessive cursing that need to be bleeped. Not we're just going to drop the shit bomb all the time, or we're going to call somebody a bitch casually in one promo. That's not what I mean. I'm talking like violence. When you have a fight scene and the camera isn't shaking, somebody gets hit with a chair or something like that, and the camera isn't trying to cut it all up and all that type of stuff, then we can say they're trying to make it an edgier product. When they can allow characters that can have some controversial elements to them, then we can say that they're trying to be edgy. They're not trying to be edgy. It was an idea that they tossed out there that they figured, okay, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Didn't, expect the response that they were going to get from the mainstream, not from the audience in the moment. The audience in the moment doesn't really know who Joe Gacy is. That was his opportunity to tell them who he is. If they allowed him to build, it probably would have gotten a reaction. But most of the people who were debuting that night didn't get a reaction. So it wasn't because the character flopped in front of the live crowd. Most people didn't get a good reaction that night. Most people don't get much of a reaction on their debuts anyway. But WWE, we can't have nice things because of fans, because of sponsors, because of all this kind of stuff. So anything that has any type of political edge to it, any type of socio-political edge, they're going to try to smooth it over, or they're going to try to they're going to basically telegraph it way in advance of what's going to happen. For instance, when they did the fat shaming storyline between Nia Jax and Alexa Bliss, they pretty much told you weeks in advance that Nia Jax is going to crush Alexa Bliss and prove that being, a big girl is not a hindrance, but it's a blessing, healthy at all sizes and all that crap, right? We saw this coming. I should have seen the Joe Gacy thing coming. I was stupid enough to think they were going to let it flesh out, but I was wrong. So they took it down. They took down all references to Joe Gacy. Hopefully, it'll just find. Maybe he'll have to go back to being generic, yelling maniac Joe Gacy guy, and that won't make mainstream, and people will still not care. But it is what it is. All right, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below.